I reject you." The words were a venomous whisper, laced with all the disdain a future Luna could muster, and they struck me harder than any physical blow. Ilara, the woman my heart had inexplicably chosen, the one whose scent was a siren's call to my wolf, stood before me with her chin high, her stunning face a mask of cold fury. Her fiancé, Alpha Kale of the Crimson Fang Pack, had his arm wrapped possessively around her waist, his lips curled into a triumphant sneer as he watched my world crumble. He was everything I wasn't, bold, powerful, carved from the very ideal of an alpha. And I was just Mr. Caspian, the painfully shy literature teacher at the Pax Academy, a man who stammered when called upon and hid behind stacks of books. They didn't know the truth. They couldn't see the ancient power coiled in my soul, the lineage that slept in my blood. They only saw the timid Omega they believed me to be, and in her eyes that made me utterly worthless. The pack elders surrounding us murmured their approval of her choice, their judgment a heavy shroud. My own wolf howled in agony, a silent, soul-shattering cry that echoed in the hollows of my chest. She was my mate, the other half of my existence, and she had just severed our bond in front of everyone who mattered, leaving me to bleed out on the floor of my own humiliation. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. My gaze fell from her beautiful, cruel face to the polished obsidian floor of the great hall. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, each one a pinprick of scorn. Laughter, low and mocking, rippled through the assembled pack members. Kale's deep chuckle was the loudest, a grating sound that vibrated through my bones. He squeezed Ilara's waist, pulling her impossibly closer, and she leaned into him, a perfect picture of a devoted mate. My mate. The word was ash in my mouth. My hands, hidden in the pockets of my worn tweed jacket, clenched into fists, my knuckles white. I had to stay calm. I had to maintain the facade that had protected me for so long. Revealing myself now would unravel years of careful planning, of hiding in plain sight. It would mean war. But my wolf, primal and wounded, clawed at the cage of my control, begging to be released, to show them all what a true alpha looked like. It wanted to rip the smirk from Kael's face and claim what was ours. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, teacher?" Kael's voice boomed across the silent hall, dripping with condescension. He called me teacher like it was an insult, a slur. I forced my head up, my eyes meeting his. I saw the raw, untamed power of a dominant alpha in his gaze, but beneath it, there was a flicker of insecurity, a deep-seated fear that he masked with bravado. He was strong, but his strength was a raging fire, uncontrolled, destructive. He didn't have the quiet, unshakable foundation of a born leader. He had taken the Crimson Fang Pack by force, not by right. My own voice, when it came out, was barely a whisper, a tremor of the storm raging within me. "No, Alpha Kael." The title felt like poison on my tongue. "Good," he barked. "Then get out of my sight. Your presence here is an insult to my Luna." My Luna. The words twisted the knife already lodged in my heart. Ilara didn't even look at me. Her focus was entirely on Kael, her expression adoring. Was it real? Or was she so desperate to secure her position that she would blind herself to his true nature? She was the daughter of the previous Alpha, a man Kyle had defeated. Her union with him was a political necessity, a way to unify a fractured pack. But the Moon Goddess had chosen me. Didn't that mean anything? I turned. My shoulders slumped and feigned defeat. Each step away from her felt like tearing a part of my soul away. The whispers and snickers followed me, a chorus of mockery that echoed the self-doubt that had been my constant companion for years. Was I wrong to hide? Was this life of quiet servitude, of watching and waiting, the coward's path? My father's words, spoken to me on the night he died, resurfaced in my mind. Power is not a weapon to be brandished, Caspian. It is a shield to protect. When the time comes, you will know. Until then, be the last thing they ever expect. The time had not yet come. But as I walked out of the great hall, leaving my heart shattered on the floor behind me, I knew that the day of reckoning was drawing closer. Kale's arrogance would be his downfall, and Ilara would have to face the truth of the man she had rejected. The academy halls felt colder, emptier, as I made my way back to my small, book-filled classroom. It was my sanctuary, the one place where I could be myself, or at least the self I presented to the world. The scent of old paper and ink was a balm to my frayed nerves. I sank into my worn leather chair, the silence pressing in on me. The rejection was a physical ache, a cold void in my chest that pulsed with every beat of my heart. My wolf paced restlessly within me, whining, refusing to accept the finality of it. Mates were sacred, a bond forged by the goddess herself. To reject a mate was to defy destiny, an act that carried consequences for both souls. I would be weakened, adrift, until I could somehow sever the emotional tether completely. And Ilara, she would feel it too. A faint, persistent emptiness she would likely attribute to anything but the loss of a mate she never wanted. She had chosen power and status with Kale over the fated bond with a man she saw as less than nothing. A soft knock on my classroom door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. The announcement ceremony was the pack's main event tonight. "Come in," I called out, my voice still hoarse. The door creaked open, and a young she-wolf with wide, concerned eyes peeked in. It was Lyra, one of my brightest students. She was an Omega, like me, or so everyone thought. In a pack that valued strength above all else, Omegas were often overlooked, their gentle natures mistaken for weakness. "Mr. Caspian?" she whispered, stepping fully into the room. I'm so sorry." Her sympathy was a small, flickering candle in my overwhelming darkness. I managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Lyra. It is what it is." "It's not right," she insisted, her fists clenched at her sides. "Alpha Kale is a bully, and Ilara, she's changed since her father." Lyra trailed off, looking over her shoulder as if afraid of being overheard. "Be careful what you say, Lyra," I warned gently, though her words resonated with my own thoughts. "The Alpha has ears everywhere." "I know," she said, her gaze dropping to the floor. "But you're a good person, Mr. Caspian. You're always kind to us, the ones everyone else ignores. You don't deserve this." Her loyalty was a gift I didn't know I had. "Kindness is not a quality highly valued in this pack," I murmured, more to myself than to her. "Maybe it should be," she replied fiercely. "Maybe strength isn't just about how loud you can roar." Her words struck a chord deep within me. She was wiser than her years. She saw what so many others, blinded by ambition and fear, could not. It was a glimmer of hope. Perhaps not everyone in the Crimson Fang pack was content with Kale's brutal reign. "You should get back to the celebration, Lyra," I told her. "It's not safe for you to be seen with me right now." She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Caspian." As she left, closing the door softly behind her, I was left alone with my thoughts once more. Lyra's words echoed in my mind. Strength isn't just about how loud you can roar. My father had believed that. He had ruled our pack, the ancient Moonstone pack, with wisdom and compassion, his strength a quiet river, not a raging flood. Kale was a pale imitation of a true alpha. He ruled through fear because he could not command respect. The ache in my chest sharpened, and I let out a shuddering breath. The bond was still there, a raw, severed nerve. I could feel Ilara's presence in the back of my mind, a distant star whose light was fading. I could feel her emotions, muted as they were, triumph, relief, and a strange, faint undercurrent of doubt? Was it just wishful thinking? I pushed myself out of the chair and walked to the window, looking out over the academy grounds towards the Alpha Citadel, a modern, imposing structure of glass and steel that Kale had built to replace the old, traditional pack house. It was a monument to his ego. My reflection stared back at me in the dark glass. A man of average height, with unruly brown hair that always seemed to fall into his eyes, and a quiet demeanor that screamed unremarkable. I wore glasses I didn't need and clothes that were deliberately drab. It was the perfect camouflage. No one would ever suspect that this timid teacher was Caspian Volkov, the last surviving heir of the Moonstone pack, an alpha of a lineage so old and powerful it was considered a myth, an alpha who had come to the Crimson Fang territory not by chance, but to reclaim what was stolen from his family generations ago. My mission had been simple: observe, gather allies, and wait for the right moment to challenge the corrupt alpha who sat on my ancestral lands. But I had not accounted for the fates to be so cruel as to mate me with the daughter of my enemy's successor, Ilara. Her rejection was a complication I had not foreseen, a personal agony that now intertwined with my duty. It changed everything. My patient, methodical plan was now shot through with the searing pain of a broken heart. The waiting game had just become infinitely more difficult. My wolf craved vengeance, not just for my family, but for its own stolen destiny. And I, Caspian Volkov, the hidden alpha, was beginning to think it was time to stop being a teacher and start being a king. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. The rejection settled into a dull, constant ache, a phantom limb that would occasionally flare with sharp, debilitating pain. At night, my dreams were filled with her. Her scent of wild roses and rain, the musical sound of her laughter from a time before Kale, the way her silver eyes seemed to look right through me. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, the emptiness beside me in my small cottage a palpable presence. At the academy, I was a ghost. Students who once greeted me with shy smiles now averted their gazes. My colleagues, the other teachers, spoke to me only when necessary, their conversations clipped and formal. I was the rejected one, a pariah. The story of my public humiliation had spread like wildfire, embellished with each telling until I was painted as a delusional Omega who had foolishly imagined a connection with the future Luna. Ilara, of course, was no longer teaching her art classes at the academy. As the Alpha's chosen mate, she was now being prepared for her duties as Luna. I saw her sometimes from my classroom window, walking the grounds with Kale, his arm always around her. She looked radiant, every bit the powerful Luna she was destined to be. but I could see the subtle stiffness in her posture, the forced quality of her smile when she looked at him. Or was I just projecting my own desperate hope onto her? Kale made sure my life was difficult. My teaching supplies went missing. My classroom was accidentally double booked for warrior training, forcing me to hold my literature lessons out on the damp lawns. He couldn't fire me. The academy had a charter that protected its staff, but he could make my position untenable. Each petty act of cruelty was designed to break me, to force me out of the Packlands. He wanted me gone, a loose end tied up and discarded. One afternoon, as I was cleaning chalk dust from an old blackboard after a particularly trying day, Kyle himself appeared in my doorway. He filled the frame, an imposing figure of raw power and arrogance. Two of his most brutal enforcers, Jax and Ronan, stood behind him, their arms crossed, smirks on their faces. "Mr. Caspian," Kyle said, his voice deceptively smooth. "Still here. I'm surprised. I thought a creature of your sensitivity would have scurried away by now." I continued wiping the board, my back to him. "This is my home, Alpha Kyle." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This is my territory, and you are a guest who has overstayed his welcome. Ilara is my mate, my Luna. The sooner you accept that, the better." I turned to face him, keeping my expression neutral, my hands relaxed at my sides. It was an effort of will that left me trembling internally. I have accepted it. I made no claim. "But you wanted to," he sneered, stepping into the room. His scent, a mix of kine and aggression, filled the small space, making my wolf bristle. "The goddess made a mistake. A weakling like you for a Luna like her? It's laughable. I corrected that mistake." "The goddess does not make mistakes," I said, my voice quiet but firm. Kyle's eyes narrowed. For a second, his alpha aura flared, pressing down on me, a physical force meant to intimidate, to force submission. It was strong, but I had faced far worse in my training. I stood my ground, my own aura a tightly coiled secret, a sleeping dragon he was foolishly prodding. I let a flicker of his pressure affect me, allowing my shoulders to slump slightly, my eyes to drop, playing the part of the cowed Omega. It satisfied him. His aura receded, and the smirk returned. "See? You know your place. Let me give you some advice, teacher. Pack your books and leave." There are other territories that might welcome an Omega scholar. This is not one of them. "And if I choose to stay?" I asked, my gaze still on the floor. "Then your life will continue to be unpleasant," he said, the threat hanging heavy in the air. "I am a very powerful alpha. It would be a shame if something unfortunate were to happen to a lone Omega who has no one to protect him." He turned to leave, his enforcers falling into step behind him. At the door, he paused. "The mating ceremony is in 1 month, the full moon. You are, of course, not invited. After that, Ilara will bear my mark, and any lingering connection you feel will be burned away. She will be mine completely." He left, and the silence he left behind was heavy with his menace. My wolf was snarling, a low, guttural sound in my mind, fighting against my control. "He insults us! He threatens us! Let me tear him apart!" "Patience," I sent back, my mental voice a soothing balm on its rage. "Our time will come. He is digging his own grave." But his words had found their mark. The thought of Ilara bearing Kyle's mating mark was a physical agony. It was a brand on the soul, a permanent claiming. It would overwrite the faint echo of our own bond, severing it forever. If I was going to act, I had to do it before the next full moon. My carefully constructed timeline had just been torn to shreds. 1 month. I had 1 month to unravel Kael's power structure, rally a resistance, and challenge him for the alpha title of the Crimson Fang, for the leadership of my ancestral lands. It was an impossible task. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my small cottage, surrounded by the books and artifacts I had salvaged from my family's history. I traced the faded lines on an old map of the territory, a map that showed the locations of ley lines and hidden moonwells, sources of power Kael knew nothing about. My father had taught me how to draw upon them, how to use the very land as a source of strength. It was an ancient magic, a birthright of the Volkov line. Kael's strength was in his fists and his fear tactics. Mine was in the earth, in the moon, in a lineage that stretched back 1,000 years. I needed allies. I thought of Lyra, the young Omega student. I thought of others in the pack who lived in fear, the elders who had been silenced, the warriors who disagreed with Kael's brutal methods but were too afraid to speak out. Were there enough of them? My gaze fell upon a small leather-bound journal on my desk. My mother's. I hadn't opened it in years. It was too painful, but something compelled me to reach for it now. I flipped through the delicate pages, her elegant script filling the lines. It was mostly filled with her thoughts on pack philosophy, on art, on the nature of the shifter soul. But then I found it. An entry dated a few weeks before she and my father were killed in the raid that destroyed our pack. I had a vision last night. A silver-eyed she-wolf, proud and fierce, standing beside a shadow. The shadow was my son, my Caspian. He was hidden, but his power was a star waiting to be born. The she-wolf is his destiny, but she is lost in a forest of lies. She will wound him. She will break his heart. But only she can see the man behind the shadow. Only she can call the star into the sky. He must not give up on her, even when she gives up on herself. A cold shiver ran down my spine. A silver-eyed she-wolf, Elara. My mother had seen her. She had seen this, all of this. She will wound him, but only she can see the man behind the shadow. The path forward was no clearer, but my resolve hardened into steel. This wasn't just about my pack, my birthright, or even my own broken heart. It was about her. Kael wasn't just a tyrant. He was the forest of lies my mother had written about. He was poisoning Elara's spirit, twisting her into something she wasn't meant to be. I couldn't challenge him just to save myself. I had to challenge him to save her. The first step was to stop being Mr. Caspian. I closed the journal, a new sense of purpose washing over me. The time for hiding was over. It was time for the shadow to reveal the star it held within. I had 1 month to become the alpha she needed, the alpha this pack deserved, whether they knew it yet or not. The shy teacher was about to teach the lesson of a lifetime. My strategy had to be twofold: undermine Kael's authority from the shadows, and, simultaneously, start to shed the meek persona of Mr. Caspian in subtle, calculated ways. I couldn't go from Omega to Alpha overnight. It would be too jarring, too unbelievable. It had to be a slow burn, a gradual reveal that would plant seeds of doubt and curiosity. I started with the academy. It was my turf, the place where I was most underestimated. During a faculty meeting, one of Kael's cronies, a brutish warrior named Silas who taught combat training, proposed diverting funds from the arts and literature programs to buy new weaponry. It was a typical Kael-approved move, prioritizing brawn over brains. Normally, Mr. Caspian would have stayed silent, perhaps fiddling with his glasses in nervous agreement. Today, I did not. "I disagree," I said. The words dropped into the silent room like stones in a still pond. Every head turned to look at me. Silas scowled. "What did you say, bookworm?" he grunted. I stood up, my posture straight, my hands resting calmly on the table. I said, "I disagree. A pack that cannot think is a pack that cannot adapt. A warrior who only knows how to fight is just a weapon. A warrior who understands history, strategy, and philosophy, the things literature teaches us, is a leader. Cutting our budget would be a strategic error." My voice was different. It wasn't the hesitant stammer they were used to. It was quiet, but it held a new resonance, an undercurrent of authority that made the air thicken. I held Silas's glare without flinching. He was momentarily stunned into silence. The head of the academy, an older she-wolf named Elspeth, who privately despised Kale, seized the opportunity. "Mr. Caspian makes an excellent point. The proposal is denied." Silas shot me a look of pure venom, but he backed down. It was a small victory, but the ripples were immediate. Whispers followed me down the hall. "Did you hear the teacher talk back to Silas? He wasn't even scared." Next, I sought out my allies. I started with Lyra. I found her in the library, shelving books. "Lyra," I said, my voice low, "can we talk? Somewhere private?" She led me to a hidden alcove between dusty shelves. "What is it, Mr. Caspian?" "I need your help," I said, dropping all pretense. "I know you see what Kale is doing to this pack. I know you're not the only one. I need to know who else feels this way, who still remembers the old ways, who is loyal to the memory of Alara's father, Alpha Thorn." Her eyes widened. "This is dangerous talk." "Living under Kale's rule is dangerous," I countered. "He's running this pack into the ground. His alliances are weak, his trade deals are failing. The only thing keeping him in power is fear. I want to offer them hope instead." She searched my face, her gaze intense. "Why are you doing this? After the rejection?" "Because it's the right thing to do," I said simply. "And because she chose the wrong man. She needs someone to show her that." That seemed to convince her. She gave me a list of names. A grizzled old warrior who had been Thorn's second in command. A healer who was tired of patching up pack members Kale had brutalized in training sessions. A handful of other Omegas who were the pack's invisible information network. My nights were spent meeting with them in secret, in root cellars and forgotten corners of the territory. I didn't reveal my true identity. To them, I was just Mr. Caspian, the teacher who had finally found his courage. But I spoke with the authority of my bloodline. I talked about strategy, about a future where strength was measured in unity and wisdom, not just brute force. I planted the seeds of rebellion. Meanwhile, the universe seemed intent on throwing Alara and me together. One evening, I was walking by the river that bordered the territory, a place I often went to clear my head. And there she was, skipping stones across the water's surface, her silver hair gleaming in the twilight. She wasn't wearing the formal attire of a Luna-to-be, but simple jeans and a sweater. She looked younger, softer, more like the girl I remembered from before KL. She didn't see me at first. I could have turned and walked away. My wolf screamed at me to go to her. My pride, wounded and raw, told me to leave. But my mother's words echoed in my head. He must not give up on her. I took a breath and stepped out from the trees. "Alara!" She stiffened, her whole body going rigid. She turned, and when she saw me, her expression was a confusing mix of anger and something else, something I couldn't name. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Spying on me?" "This is a public path," I replied calmly, keeping a respectful distance. "I didn't realize this was your private grieving spot." Her eyes flashed. "I'm not grieving." "Aren't you?" I took a step closer. I see you. I see the smile that doesn't reach your eyes. I see the way you hold yourself so tightly, as if you're afraid you'll shatter. You're not happy with him. You don't know anything about me, she snapped, but her voice trembled. KL is a strong alpha. He'll be a great leader for this pack. He's what we need. He's what he told you that you need, I corrected gently. There's a difference. He's a cage, Alara. A gilded one, but a cage nonetheless. And you're a wild bird. You're not meant to be kept. A tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. She angrily wiped it away. Why are you doing this? Why can't you just leave me alone? I rejected you. It's over. The bond isn't, I said, the words heavy with truth. I still feel you, and I know you feel me. It's that little piece of emptiness you can't explain, isn't it? That feeling that something is missing, even when you have everything you thought you wanted. She stared at me, her silver eyes wide, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She couldn't deny it. I could see it on her face. I made my choice, she whispered, more to convince herself than me. You made a choice based on fear, I said, my voice softening. Fear for the pack, fear of being seen as weak. You chose the devil you knew. But what if there was another choice? What if you chose the man the goddess picked for you? A shy teacher, she scoffed, the old disdain returning, a shield for her wounded heart. The pack would laugh at me. They need an alpha, not you. The insult stung, but I didn't let it show. You see a teacher, I said, my voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. But you have no idea who I really am. Before she could respond, the sound of snapping twigs came from the woods behind us. Kale emerged, his face a thundercloud. Jax and Ronan were right behind him. Ilara, get away from him, he roared. His eyes were blazing with fury, fixed on me. I warned you to stay away from her, Omega. Ilara flinched, rushing to his side as if for protection. Kale, it's not what it looks like. We were just talking. There's nothing to talk about, he snarled, pushing her behind him. He stalked towards me, his body shifting, growing larger as his wolf pushed for control. You have a death wish, teacher. I will not have you sniffing around my mate. This was it, the confrontation I had been avoiding, but now it was on my terms. I didn't back away. I stood my ground, my body relaxed, my gaze unwavering. She is not your mate, I said, my voice resonating with a power that surprised even myself. I am the alpha. I sanction it, he roared and lunged. He was fast, a blur of motion, but I was faster. I had been trained by the best warriors my pack had left, trained to fight alphas far stronger than him. I sidestepped his clumsy charge, and as he stumbled past, I simply stuck out my foot. He went down, sprawling in the dirt with a shocked grunt. Jax and Ronan moved to attack, but I just looked at them. I let a fraction of my true aura leak out, not enough to reveal myself, but enough to give them pause. It was a cold, ancient pressure that promised death. They froze, their warrior instinct screaming at them that they were facing something far more dangerous than a literature teacher. Kale scrambled to his feet, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. He was about to charge again, but Alara cried out, "Kale, stop! Please! He's not worth it!" Her words, meant to de-escalate, were another casual knife in my heart. He's not worth it. Kale hesitated, his chest heaving. He looked from me to his frozen enforcers, then to Alara's pleading face. He knew, on some level, that something was wrong, that I had gone down too easily, that his men had hesitated. He needed to re-establish his dominance. He straightened up, brushing the dirt from his clothes. He forced a laugh. "You're right, my love. He's not. He's just a pathetic Omega who got lucky. Let's go." He grabbed her arm, his grip unnecessarily tight, and pulled her away. He shot me one last look over his shoulder, a look that promised retribution. "This isn't over, teacher." I watched them go, the pain of her words warring with the cold satisfaction of the encounter. I had shown him. I had shown all of them that there was more to me than met the eye. The mask was beginning to crack. Elara had seen it. I saw the confusion in her eyes as Kale dragged her away. She had called me pathetic, but her gaze lingered on me, filled with a dawning, terrifying question. Who was I? The fallout from my confrontation with Kale was swift and brutal. The next morning, I arrived at my classroom to find it completely trashed. Books were ripped apart, their pages scattered like snow. My desk was overturned, its contents strewn across the floor. And scrawled across the blackboard in crude, angry letters were the words, "Leave or die, Omega." It was a clear message from the Alpha. This was my final warning. But instead of fear, I felt a cold, hard anger settle in my bones. He was a cornered animal, lashing out. My quiet defiance was getting under his skin. He'd expected me to crumble, but I hadn't, and it was making him reckless. My students arrived to find me calmly sweeping up the mess. Lyra and a few others rushed to help, their faces etched with outrage. The rest hovered in the doorway, their fear palpable. "Who did this, Mr. Caspian?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling with rage. "Who do you think?" I replied, my voice even. I didn't need to say his name. Everyone knew. This had Kale's signature all over it. This act of petty vandalism was a mistake on his part. It didn't make him look strong. It made him look like a bully who was threatened by a teacher. It showed weakness, not power. My secret allies, the network Lyra had helped me build, saw it too. Support for my clandestine movement grew. More PAC members, disgusted by Kale's tyranny and his blatant attack on the Academy, a neutral and respected institution, began to seek me out. The fractures in Kale's regime were starting to show. He grew more paranoid, more violent. Training sessions became brutal beatings. PAC members were punished for the slightest perceived infractions. The fear he cultivated was turning into resentment. He was losing his grip, and he knew it. My relationship with Elara, however, was more complicated. She avoided me, but I could feel her watching me from a distance. The bond between us, though rejected, was a stubborn thing. It pulsed with her confusion, her turmoil. She was torn between her duty to Kyle, the man who represented security and power, and the undeniable pull towards me, the man who was becoming an enigma. I knew I needed to force the issue. I needed to show her the truth about Kyle, a truth so undeniable it would shatter the lies she had built around herself. My opportunity came a week before the mating ceremony. My network of Omegas had brought me a crucial piece of information. Kyle was secretly meeting with representatives from the Feral Ridge Pack, a group of violent outcasts known for their cruelty and their rejection of traditional shifter laws. They were mercenaries, and Kyle was negotiating with them. But why? His own warriors were formidable. I had my suspicions. Alpha Thorn, Elara's father, hadn't died in a fair challenge as Kyle claimed. The story never sat right with me. Thorn was a powerful, experienced alpha. Kyle was younger, stronger, but reckless. It was said that Thorn had been wounded in a rogue attack just days before the challenge. It was too convenient. I suspected Kyle had orchestrated that attack, using mercenaries to weaken his opponent before issuing a challenge he knew he couldn't win fairly. Now it seemed he was covering his tracks or planning something equally nefarious. The meeting was to take place at the old stone circle on the edge of the territory, a sacred place Kyle had desecrated with his dark dealings. I had to get Ilara there. She needed to hear it from his own mouth. I cornered her near the Academy's art studio, a place she still visited when she thought no one was looking. It was her own sanctuary. "Ilara, we need to talk," I said, blocking her path. "I have nothing to say to you," she replied. Her voice cold, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "You're going to marry a monster, and I can't let you do that without showing you the truth. Kyle is not a monster, isn't he?" I challenged. "The man who trashed a classroom? The man who rules through fear? Is that the kind of king you want for this pack? Is that the kind of father you want for your children?" Her face paled. "He did that to protect me from you." "He did that because he is weak," I shot back, "and tonight I can prove it. He's meeting someone at the old stone circle. Come with me, hide, listen to what he says. If I'm wrong, I will leave this territory and never bother you again. But if I am right, you will have a choice to make." She stared at me, her mind at war. I could see the struggle in her eyes. The part of her that was still Alpha Thorn's daughter, the part of her that valued honor and truth, was battling against the part that craved safety and stability. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "I rejected you. I hurt you." "Because my mother once told me that you were my destiny," I said, the words raw with honesty. "And even if my destiny is to save you for someone else, I will do it. I won't let him destroy you." My vulnerability, my utter sincerity, seemed to break through her defenses. The fight went out of her eyes, replaced by a weary, desperate hope. "Fine," she agreed, her voice barely audible. "I'll come, but if this is a trick—" "It's not a trick," I assured her. "It's the truth." That night, under a sliver of moon, we crept through the woods to the stone circle. The air was tense, heavy with ancient magic. We concealed ourselves in a thicket of bushes that offered a clear view of the clearing. We didn't have to wait long. Cal arrived, not with his usual enforcers, but alone. Shortly after, 3 large, scarred shifters emerged from the trees. Their scent was wild, unpleasant, feral ridge. "Did you bring the payment?" The leader, a brute with a mangled ear, growled. "It's being arranged," Cal said dismissively. "We have other things to discuss. My position here is less stable than I would like. There is a resistance growing. I need you to eliminate the source." "Who is it?" "A teacher." Kyle spat the word. "An Omega named Caspian. But he is more than he seems. I want him gone. Make it look like a rogue attack. No witnesses." Beside me, I felt Ilara gasp. Her hand flew to her mouth. This was bad enough, but what came next was worse. "Just like we did for the old Alpha?" the feral ridge wolf sneered. "That cost you extra. A clean job, but expensive." Kyle's face darkened. Thorn was a fool. He trusted his patrols. He never saw it coming. "He was wounded, but not dead," the wolf reminded him. "You still had to face him in the circle." "A wounded animal is no match for a true predator," Kyle boasted. "He was pathetic, begging for his life at the end. It was almost disappointing." A choked sob escaped Ilara's lips. It was quiet, but in the silent woods, it sounded like a scream. Kyle and the others heard it. Their heads snapped in our direction. "Who's there?" Kyle roared. There was no more time for stealth. I grabbed Ilara's hand. "Run!" We crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at our faces. Behind us, I could hear the enraged howls of the feral ridge wolves as they gave chase. They were fast, their forms already shifting as they ran. Kael was with them, his own powerful wolf form emerging. I can't run anymore, Elara gasped, stumbling. The truth of her father's murder had shattered her. Her legs gave out and she fell. The wolves were closing in, their snarling muzzles visible in the moonlight. I stood over her, placing my body between her and the approaching danger. This was it. There was no more hiding. Elara, I said, my voice changing, deepening, shedding the last vestiges of the meek teacher. It was a voice of command, of pure, undiluted alpha power. Close your eyes. I let go. The power I had kept suppressed for years erupted from me like a supernova. My body surged, bones cracking and reshaping, growing larger, more powerful. My tweed jacket ripped to shreds. My human skin gave way to thick, midnight black fur. My senses exploded, the world coming alive in a riot of scents and sounds. My glasses, the useless prop, fell to the forest floor. When I was done, I was no longer Mr. Caspian. I was a wolf. But I was not just any wolf. I was bigger than Kael, bigger than any wolf they had ever seen. My fur was the color of a starless night, and my eyes, they glowed with a faint silver light, the mark of the Volkov lineage. My aura, the one I had kept coiled and hidden, unfurled like a tidal wave, a crushing force of ancient royal power that slammed into our pursuers. The feral ridge wolves whimpered and fell back, their instincts screaming at them that they were facing not just an alpha, but a primal force of nature. Kael, in his powerful but lesser wolf form, skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror. I let out a roar. It was not the angry snarl of a beast like Kael. It was the sound of a king reclaiming his throne. It shook the trees and echoed through the valley, a declaration of power that every shifter for miles would feel in their bones. It was a sound that said, "I am here." Behind me, I heard Elara's faint whisper, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. Caspian? The world had turned upside down. The man she had mocked, the teacher she had rejected, the Omega she had pitied, was now standing over her, a fearsome, mythical creature of immense power. The shy teacher had revealed himself as the pack's true alpha. And for Kael, the lesson was just beginning. The standoff in the moonlit forest was a silent, crackling battle of wills. Kael's wolf, a large, aggressive beast of brown and gray fur, was postured for a fight, but terror warred with his rage. He could not comprehend what he was seeing. My sheer size, the suffocating pressure of my aura, the ancient power that radiated from me. It all defied the reality he knew. Omegas did not become this. Teachers did not command this kind of power. His hired thugs, the feral ridge wolves, were already backing away, their tails tucked, their predatory instincts completely overwhelmed by a primal fear. They recognized a superior predator when they saw one. "Leave," I commanded, not with my voice, but with a pure projection of intent, a wave of dominance that crashed into them. It was an alpha command they could not disobey. They turned and fled, melting back into the darkness of the woods, abandoning the alpha who had hired them. Now it was just Kael, and Elara, who was slowly pushing herself up from the ground, her silver eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. She was staring at me, at the creature I had become, and I could feel her shock, her confusion, her betrayal, and a spark of something else, a flicker of awe. Kael, seeing his allies desert him, let out a furious snarl and charged. It was a desperate, foolish move. He was running on pure rage, his mind unable to process the shift in power. I met his charge not with equal ferocity, but with calm, overwhelming strength. I didn't even need to move. I simply anchored myself, and when he slammed into me, it was like a wave breaking against a cliff. He bounced off, stunned. Before he could recover, I moved. I was a black shadow, a blur of motion. I pinned him to the ground with a single paw on his chest, my weight easily overpowering him. I leaned down, my glowing eyes inches from his, and let out a low, guttural growl that vibrated through his entire body. It was a sound that promised annihilation. He struggled beneath me, but it was futile. He was utterly, completely dominated. I could have ripped his throat out then and there. My wolf, fueled by years of repressed anger and the fresh pain of his treachery, begged me to do it. But that was Kyle-'s way, not mine. You are not the alpha of this pack, I projected directly into his mind. You are a usurper and a murderer. You stole this land. You stole your title. You tried to steal my mate. His mind reeled from the mental intrusion. He stared up at me, his wolf eyes filled with pure terror. He finally understood. I wasn't just a freak of nature. I was something more. I released him, stepping back. "Shift," I commanded. Trembling, he obeyed. His wolf form receded, leaving him naked and shivering on the forest floor. I, too, shifted back, the transformation flowing more gracefully. My clothes were gone, but in the shifter world, that was a minor detail. I stood tall, no longer the stooped, uncertain teacher. My body was lean but powerful, corded with the muscle of a warrior, not a scholar. Scars, long hidden by my drab clothes, crisscrossed my torso, mementos of the attack that had orphaned me. Elara was still on the ground, her hand covering her mouth. Her gaze flickered between me and the cowering Kale. The lies that had formed the foundation of her world were crumbling around her. "My father," she whispered, her voice choked with grief and rage. "You killed my father." She wasn't speaking to me. Her eyes, filled with a hurt so profound it made my own heart ache, were fixed on Kale. "He was weak," Kale spat, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. "He would have led this pack to ruin." "He was my father!" she screamed, scrambling to her feet. The timid Luna-in-waiting was gone, replaced by a furious she-wolf. She launched herself at him, her hands balled into fists, raining blows on his chest. "You lied to me! You made me a part of this! I hate you!" Kale, shamed and defeated, could only shield his face. I stepped forward and gently pulled her back. She resisted for a moment, then collapsed against my chest, her body racked with sobs. I held her, my arms wrapping around her. Her scent filled my senses, and despite the chaos, despite the pain, my wolf purred with a deep, possessive satisfaction. She was where she belonged. "It's okay," I murmured into her hair. "I've got you." She cried for a long time, mourning her father, mourning the life she thought she had. I let her, offering the silent comfort of my presence. When her sobs finally subsided, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. She looked up at me, really looked at me for the first time. She saw the man, not the disguise. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "Who are you, really?" "My name is Caspian Volkov," I said, my voice resonating with the truth of my identity. "I am the alpha of the Moonstone Pack, or what's left of it. These lands, this territory, it all belonged to my ancestors before your pack drove mine out generations ago. Cal's predecessor didn't just conquer a rival. He committed genocide. My parents were the last true rulers. They were murdered when I was a boy. I was hidden, raised in exile, taught to conceal my nature. I came here not just for revenge, but for restoration, to reclaim my birthright and build a pack worthy of the name. Her eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. The shy teacher, the historical knowledge, the quiet strength she had sensed but couldn't explain. It all made a terrible, beautiful kind of sense. "You're the lost Alpha," she breathed, repeating the name of an old legend, a ghost story told to shifter pups. "I thought you were a myth." "I am very real," I said. I looked over at Cal, who was now being warily circled by my own allies, the small resistance group I had formed, who had followed the sound of my roar and arrived to witness the aftermath. Lyra was there, her eyes shining with pride. The old warrior, Gareth, Thorn's former second, looked at me with newfound respect. "Take him to the pack cells," I ordered, and my voice carried the indisputable weight of command. "He will stand trial before the entire pack for the murder of Alpha Thorn." Gareth and 2 other warriors hauled Cal to his feet and dragged him away. He didn't resist. His power was broken. Now I was alone with Ilara in the sacred circle, the air still humming with my power. The dynamic between us had been irrevocably altered. I was no longer the Omega who loved her from afar. I was the Alpha who had saved her, the rightful ruler of the land she called home. And she was the woman who had rejected me. "Caspian," she began, her voice trembling. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry for everything, for how I treated you, for what I said. I was a fool." "You were scared," I said, my voice softening, "and you were trying to protect your pack. You did what you thought was right." "But I was wrong," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes again. "I was so wrong. The goddess chose you for me, and I threw it away. I broke the bond. Can it ever be fixed?" That was the question that hung between us, heavy and fragile. The rejection had been public, formal. Reversing it was nearly unheard of. It would require a deep, mutual acceptance, a reaffirmation of the bond in both our hearts. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. My own heart was a mess of conflicting emotions. I loved her. My wolf would always scream for her. But she had wounded me deeply. The memory of her cold disdain in the Great Hall was a scar on my soul. "You rejected a shy teacher, Ilara. You mocked an Omega. Can you accept an Alpha? Can you accept me, all of me?" "Yes," she whispered, her sincerity a palpable thing. She took a tentative step closer, her hand reaching out as if to touch my face, then hesitating. "I see you now, Caspian. I see the kindness of the teacher and the strength of the Alpha. They're the same man, and he's the man I should have chosen. If you'll have me." Her vulnerability was my undoing. This was the Ilara my mother had seen in her vision, the proud, fierce she-wolf, finally free from the forest of lies. My anger, my hurt, it all melted away, replaced by the deep, abiding love that had been there all along. I closed the distance between us, taking her hesitant hand in mine. I brought it to my lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Her skin was soft, and a jolt of energy, the faint echo of our dormant bond, sparked between us. "There is much to be done," I said, my gaze intense. "I have to win over this pack, expose all of Kael's corruption, and build something new from the ashes. It will be a long and difficult road." I paused, my thumb stroking the back of her hand. "But it's a road I do not want to walk alone." A radiant smile, the first genuine smile I had seen from her in months, broke through her tears. It was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. "You won't be," she promised. In the center of the ancient stone circle, surrounded by the silent, watchful trees, we stood together, 2 halves of a whole, finally reunited. The path to healing would be long, for us and for the pack. But for the first time, there was hope. The rejection was a wound, but it was not a fatal one. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning.